We talk about performance. We talk about resilience. We rarely talk about the cost. I'm Dr. Charryse Johnson, mental health expert, author, and keynote speaker. And this is where we make the invisible visible. We look directly at the space between strength and strain, between I'm fine and what your body already knows. Because when you understand the connection between your mind, your body, and your story, you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, what becomes possible when I lead myself well? This is clarity under pressure. This is power without the mask. This is Dear Dr. Charryse.
This is Dear Dr. Charryse, where we make the invisible visible. And today we're talking about creativity as more than talent or content or performance, because sometimes the thing that you create becomes the place you go to come back to yourself, to survive isolation. It's the place that you call home. Today's listener question: Dear Dr. Charryse, I know what I feel called to do, but pursuing it has started to make me question myself. I compare my timing to everyone else's. I feel discouraged when doors don't open. How do I keep pursuing my dream without letting the outcome determine my worth? And I have an incredible guest who is here to get into this conversation. She's an American-Canadian singer-songwriter, influencer, and actress whose independent career has reached a global audience through music, film, television, I told you she was amazing, and digital storytelling. Help me in welcoming Chloé Caroline.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's so many places that I want to go.
Yes.
You know, we were talking a little bit before, and I was just kind of talking about music in of itself and how healing it is. I've always been the person who, even before I studied it and understood it, felt like it was also that place where it didn't matter who you were, like we'll all come together. But tell me a little bit about music and the role it's played in your life.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, I agree 100%. Music has been my medicine forever. I mean, my parents would say, you know, I've always kind of been an insomniac. And when I was like 2 years old, I'd sing myself to sleep at night. You know, it was always my soother. It was something that I turned to when I just needed somebody to connect with. And you know, I got really sick when I was 11 years old, and music was how I processed everything.
Wow.
Whether it was discovering other people that also wrote songs and was like, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, other people do this and they find solace in this, or just being able to process everything that I was going through at the time because it was very serious. And so it's always been that for me. Like I always say, like, I feel like I'd be insane without it. It's definitely how I get through.
No, I feel you on that. I know that there are people who don't like music, and that is fine.
Totally.
But it is something that has always been a significant part of my life. And I will even encourage people to make different playlists.
Oh my gosh.
To support them through different moments. I'm like, you need that one playlist that is like your baddie playlist.
Right.
Every song on there makes you feel invincible. And then you need that playlist that encourages you in those really
high vibrational
tough moments. Yes. So speaking of the dynamic of high vibrational, tell us what that means to you and how you use that in the music that you create.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I would say, like, first and foremost, I've always been a huge fan of feel-good music. As much as I'm like, you know, a sap and I love a good, you know, heartbreak sort of song. I mean, we all do. I've always kind of been driven by music that lifts you up and that leaves you with some sort of hope. So for me, it also like majorly affects me. Like I'm very affected by music to the point where like sometimes like I can't listen to a sad song. It will totally throw me off. And so realizing that, I think from a young age, I was like, I want to make music that is going to lift people up, or even if it is something that is rather maybe sad, it still leaves them with some sort of hope.
Which and I appreciate. I was actually just talking about that with someone earlier. It's that we have a tendency to listen to things that express how we feel, but if we just stay there, that's a different kind of use of music versus something that goes, this music is saying what I don't have words for, but it's also kind of encouraging me not to pitch a tent. In what we're feeling.
Exactly. And I think you know, nowadays there is this whole, oh, it's cool to be edgy. It's cool to be, you know, sad girl. And I totally get it. There's something about that, obviously, that people really relate to.
Sure.
But I also think there's a huge gap for music that actually lifts people up. And I'm not talking about like sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Yeah.
But there's just, I don't know, you can tell when there's a song that has just some sort of, again, like, I don't know if it's hope or high vibrational energy. That's really the only way I can.
I definitely think there are musicians or singers that you can tell they've been through something when they're singing that song. Like, that's what I'm thinking of when you just describe it. Like, you know, they didn't just write it or pick it from another place. Like, there's something in there that absolutely connects with them. So, speaking of your songwriting, you have some new music coming out soon. So tell us all about it. And what was the inspiration or the writing process like?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So I'm really excited because I have an album that will be coming out in September. It's called Awakened. I've released 2 EPs called The Awakening Volume 1 and 2 that really led up to that. They were, you know, my spiritual awakening, my coming home to myself, my learning how to be in the present moment again, to surrender. And so it's really like a whole storyline there, right? Yeah. But as far as this next single, it's called Shivers. And I wrote it during a period of total burnout. And I remember thinking, you know, what am I even writing about anymore? Like, I'm not living my life. Like, I am just going 24/7. I've always kind of been a go person, which is kind of, it's funny because at the same time, I've also kind of been a laid back personality. So people don't really, you know, it's like no one really always knows what's going on, right? And so I was totally like hitting ground zero and kind of was like, what in life is giving me goosebumps? What is giving me shivers? And not only is it something that I want to experience again, but I need to, you know, I need to be able to be the best Chloe. I need to go out and go for a walk, and I need to cry at the sunset and hear a song and have it give me goosebumps. I mean, I have goosebumps right now talking about this, have conversations like this. And you can't feel that if you are 24/7 going or shutting yourself off from experiences, which is so common.
You said something and then you said the word feel, and I was right there in my brain. When you're going a million miles per hour, when you're in that place of deep burnout, there are no shivers. You're not feeling most of the time. You can feel very numb. And I do think it's real that, you know, I would imagine as an artist, you have to go to some degree. You do. In order to keep yourself out there. But then it is sometimes a contrast to who you really are. So let's talk a little bit, if you're comfortable, around mental health and burnout.
Please.
You know, what did you notice for yourself almost in those in-between moments when you were like, I just did this whole thing and now I'm back?
I would say I definitely noticed myself pulling away from other opportunities, whether it was like with friends, like when I was in the deep burnout, or I would try to do everything and I would keep kind of everything at arm's reach so that I had a control on everything. If things were still happening, I wasn't necessarily losing friends, but I wasn't really there when I was there. My relationship was terrible, but I was like, you know, well, at least I have one, you know, or my career's going well, so yay, you know. And so it was just kind of trying to keep tabs on everything and then not really diving into like what actually was filling my cup. And I think a lot of it too is not wanting to cut something off for the sake of like losing other things, which sometimes is a requirement.
It's often a requirement. But not easy. I want to highlight, because any opportunity I get to, I do. Everything can look great and you can still be in burnout, right? You said your career was going well, your friendships were well, you were in a relationship, and you still knew, okay, what was your turning point? What was that moment that you felt like this can't be the way I...
Yeah, there were a few. I think one of them was kind of this call that I had to move from Nashville, where I was. I'm from California, but I had moved there for college and to start my career. And I had been there for, 7 years. And again, things were going great. But every time I came back to California, I felt inspired, and I wasn't necessarily like feeling that as much anymore. And there was other creative things that I wanted to do as well. And so I think for me, it was like, all right, let's take a leap of faith. And so that kind of catapulted things. And then I did, end the relationship. And then COVID happened. And COVID, everything, it was crazy. It was like, moved to LA. I had a bunch of these other opportunities that were coming in. It was great. And then it was like,
nothing.
Totally stopped.
That's a rough time to...
Yes. And exactly. And for the first time, I remember being like, well, I guess I'm going to write by myself again. I started writing by myself. That's how it all began, when I was very, very young. But I'd gotten to a point where I was like, it's a waste of time. And when I think that was kind of the moment where I was like, hold up, like, it's not a waste of time. Like, this is why I do it. I love it. This is how I process my life. And so I think that was a turning point. And then just really making sure to pinpoint the things that were actually bringing me joy.
Yeah. It is so true that you can lose sight of things that you love when you're not doing well. Things that you're like, this has been in my life forever. I wouldn't change this. And I'm glad that you caught yourself and was like, wait a minute, something's off if I'm shutting down that part of me. All right. So you put it in the conversation. So we're going there about the relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
That dynamic of... sometimes there are things that you have to cut off in order to come back to yourself.
Truly. Yeah.
Before you cut it off.
Yeah.
What was that? I'm going to make an assumption here. You can tell me if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Tug of war.
Yeah.
Like, because, there's always like, ooh.
Yeah. I would say the tug of war was the fact that, it's somebody that I'd been with like 4 or 5 years. It was somebody that I lived with. It was somebody who shared a passion for music. So, we kind of were chasing similar dreams. It seemed, great family. But there were a lot of other things going on. He was dealing with his own mental health stuff. And so for me, I knew that as much as there was like potential and there was things about the relationship that I absolutely did love, there was more hurt than not.
I want to bring those things into the moment because I feel like that's real. And, you mentioned a lot of change, but that's also loss. Even when we know it's something that we need to give up or that's a chapter that's over, it doesn't mean that there's not grief, right? Around a great family that you interacted with, someone that's been there.
Sure.
And there's loss. So you're in California. All of that just happened. Now you're stuck inside and can't really get to anyone.
No.
What was sitting with all of that like for you?
Oh my gosh, that was insane. I was very blessed because my parents were still living here. And so I got to be with them during COVID, which was also kind of crazy, being like, all right, I'm whatever,
I've lived on my own
24 years old. Now I'm living with my parents again. So that was interesting, but I did have them, which was great. I had, a new couple of friends that I was hanging out with. So that was great. But I think for me, it was intentional because it was my time to process all of those years of things that I had kind of suppressed. And you don't know sometimes until you are like away from it, just like how bad it either was or just how out of alignment.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my journey began to figure out, like, what is it that I want to attract?
Yeah.
In a person, in a friendship, in my job.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to start small.
Yeah.
Really, it's like, what are the things that I like? Again, what lights me up, and being able to really figure out what those are and be committed to doing them for myself.
Yes.
Was how I realized that, like, there are other people that I'm going to attract on a similar wavelength, because those things started happening all of a sudden. And I could trust that. I could trust that I was making those correct decisions.
I love two things about what you said. One, I love that you mentioned giving yourself permission to figure out what you want and what you like now.
Yeah.
We have permission to pivot.
Yes, we do.
I'm a huge proponent of what we liked 5 years ago is not what we like today. And I do think it's easy to get stuck in, I'm 20 something years old. I already have someone. This needs to go in the trajectory that it's on. How can I not know myself versus, like, it's okay. It served an absolute purpose and season, but you have permission to kind of figure out how you're evolving and
totally.
what that looks like.
Well, and you have to be able to actually come to terms with, would I be okay if I never explored the possibility of something else? And I was at a point where I was not okay. And I tried to push it down, and it eventually got to a point where it was like, I was sick to my stomach at night.
Yeah.
I remember he turned to me and he was like, looks like we're going to make it. And I was like, oh, no, we're not. I mean, it was like, suddenly I was like, no, we're not. I can't do this anymore. I can't lie to myself.
The body will always tell the truth. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of that, but we also see that in neuroscience, which I get into a lot, is that we can mentally keep ourselves in situations longer than we know them to be healthy, but our body in just different ways will let us know, like, we're not okay. And I know that you're trying to pretend that you're okay. So I'm glad that you did not ignore that.
Me too. Me too.
The other thing that you said that I loved was that once you came here, you learned, here's what I love now. And you started giving those things to yourself versus our natural dynamic is, I know what I love. And if I can get that validation, if I can get that opportunity, if I can get that stage, then I'm going to feel a certain way. So that's really wise. What got you to the point that you were like, I have to give this to me first?
I think it was that I hadn't for so long, and I wanted so badly to nourish myself. Honestly, like I feel like I was starving for true nourishment in my life. And so again, it was, I was overwhelmed with, like, the big concept things. So I was like, all right, let's again start small. And I was kind of blessed to be in COVID where I, wasn't rushing off from one thing to the next. And so it was like, all right, like, I want to paint today. I'm going to paint today. I want to sit at my piano all day and write, or I want to cook. I want to go on a hike, on an adventure. And, again, just seeing the things that were aligning, things that were coming in for me that were just like, almost they freaked me out.
Yeah, you're like, how is this happening? I didn't even work for this. Like,
exactly.
Trying to go get
exactly. And like I think for me too, a huge part of this change was even like affirmations, and I remember hitting a point where I remember I was driving in the car and I was like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Either nothing happens or something great happens. And so I was like, I feel insane, but like, I'm amazing. I'm attracting, all of that is in alignment, like just starting to say these things out loud and then just noticing, even feeling my energy totally shift.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Affirmations are real, powerful, and I think they're one of the most underutilized tools to nourish ourselves that are out there, because you are speaking it out loud, which then quiets the negative thoughts that are going in an opposite direction. And you become what you believe. So you say those things enough and it really, like, you're like, okay, I really believe this about myself. And it's also okay to believe that about yourself without feeling like, you're being too much. So you mentioned a few times doing little things and starting small. What are some of those small things that maybe you're still doing or that you would encourage other people who are like, I don't know where to start.
I think the thing is we think we don't know where to start. And then it's you really have to sit with yourself and like be like, all right, what made me smile today? It could be very small. But for me, I love to be outside. I love the sunshine. So I have to walk every day. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like even today, like I was rushing around. I've got a lot to, on my plate today, but I was like, I need to get at least like a 20-minute walk in. Yeah. Like that's doable. I can do that without completely stressing myself out. And it, started my day off great. Yeah. So, something like that. Again, like cooking for me personally is another form of creativity. Yeah. So I just can kind of get out of my head and just make stuff up. Right. That's a great one. Yeah. What else? I mean, of course, writing music, but yeah, I think just like going on adventures, going on a drive, exploring somewhere. For me, like nature is just huge. It's huge. It kind of puts your whole life into perspective, as far as like sweating the small stuff, you know what I mean? You're like, okay.
You described too, just really kind of remind you like they're anchoring. That's what I hear when you describe it. It's like, I'm breathing for a moment. I'm kind of taking myself out there. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Final thoughts. What would you say to someone who's listening to this and they are struggling with making a decision that will help them move forward?
Ooh, man. I would say, I guess, I would write out the two possible outcomes, I guess, or maybe it's more than two outcomes. And kind of really sit honestly with yourself and be like, would I be cool with this, this, or this the most, I would say that would be one thing. Another would be, of course, like people say it all the time, but like pros and cons lists. Yeah. And then really just like feel in your body, like what feels, again, what is something that is going to light me up? What makes me excited? Yeah. And I think, or brings me peace. I feel like it could be either. Or both. And I think sometimes that can be a little bit confusing, but I would say, listen to your body. Yeah. Even if you think you don't know. And I'm saying that as somebody who's like always indecisive. Yeah. I got to tell you, like I am ADD, like I struggle analysis paralysis. So I deal with it. Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing. Like, it's a good thing. I'm also neurodivergent, so I'm not knocking it all. Like, I'm like, girl, I relate.
50,000 options.
Yes. But that's a different kind of piece. But I will say, and we'll get into it more in a little while, there is truth to writing it down, helps you kind of separate yourself from it. Yes. And you can almost feel your body like exhale. When you're looking at the lineup that you're like, yeah, that's it, and then it's just getting the courage. Sure. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
Conversation.
Anytime.
It was wonderful. I hope that you heard something that gave you the shivers while you are listening to this. Please make sure that you go and find her incredible music and stay tuned, because on the other side of this, we're going to break down this conversation even deeper. See you soon. Chloé was such a delight, as I'm sure you could tell by the energy that was not only here between us, but popping off the screen. It was real. It was not something that was rehearsed. And I think that's important to highlight, because one of the things that Chloé mentioned was this dynamic of high vibrational energy. And before you say, is that kind of weird? Right? We do have energy. We are energetic beings. I'm sure there are moments that you've said to yourself, oh, my energy is high, or oh, my energy is low, or oh, that person had good energy, or that person did not have good energy. I think that's the best example for people who hear things like high vibrational and think it's weird. You know the moments that you are around someone and you're like, I don't know what it is, but something about that exchange didn't feel good. Well, in the same way, we also know the moments that we are with someone and something about their spirit lifts ours. Or Chloé is an artist and a singer and an actress. When we hear music that we also find helpful and useful. There were a lot of really good key insights in the conversation that Chloé and I had. The core message that we were really focused on was being able to understand those moments in your life where you may need to shift and even reconnect with the part of yourself that feels like home, those little parts of yourself that you're like, I used to love to do that, or I don't have time for this anymore, or I used to be the kind of person who X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I'll be talking to people and they will kind of notice themselves like, I don't feel the same. I used to laugh like, I cannot remember the last time that I really laughed. Part of the conversation that she and I had before the one that you saw was, you have to be intentional with creating the environment to have those experiences. Her new music that's coming out is going to be called Shivers, and she shared with us that part of that was her journey of recognizing that she needed to get back to the things that kind of lit her up and made her feel joy and gave her goosebumps. And again, I'll say, feeling well, having good energy is not always something that we wake up and experience. And it's not something that a few select people get. Because sometimes we do. We look at people and we think, they're always so happy and they're always so this. You know what I find? I actually find when I meet people like that and I talk to them, their story will blow your mind. And there are so many times that I have been reminded that they're choosing joy. They're choosing the things that they love and that they're passionate about. They have really crafted and fought in small ways to make sure that they are nourishing themselves and they're operating as much as possible in a nourishing environment. So I want you to really consider that for yourself. Doesn't have to be a big overhaul. Maybe you're not going to have a big move and you might not be in a relationship that you need to step away from, but where are the places that you recognize you want more? And where are the places that reconnecting with creativity or nature would actually open yourselves up in different ways? Let me also add this. I'm going to just kind of go in a tangent for a moment. When it comes to the dynamic of creativity, I was the person, or have been over time, where I was like, I don't know that I would call myself a creative, because in my mind, I had creative in a box. It either meant you were a musician or an artist, or maybe you could like make clothing or pottery, right? Like it was just in those boxes. Over time, what I've learned is that the dynamic of creativity is so vast. You might be an editor. You might be a filmmaker. You might be a digital programmer, and anything that you create that brings you joy and in the ways that allow you to express yourself or share your lens so that other people can experience it or you just experience yourself is an aspect of creativity. I will say I feel like I'm a creative problem solver. And you might be like, ugh, but I enjoy that. I know that that is a gift for me to look at a problem and see multiple ways to get through it. And so creativity matters, and it is actually a very significant aspect to well-being. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future show. Creativity and laughter/play are two really crucial aspects that we don't do enough. And, as Chloé was talking about some of the shifts that she made and the ways that she started showing up in her life, those were themes that may not have been directly said in the way that you're hearing them for me, but I want you to really hear about them and bring them to the table. Another piece that I don't want us to gloss over was there were moments where she had to make choices. She had to make decisions, and she had to be honest about where she was, how it was impacting her, and the ways that she recognized it was time for something different. She shared a brief moment around a relationship that she was in. And again, this isn't everyone's story, but it was part of her story. And the physical symptoms and signs that let her know that this was no longer a place that was in alignment for her in that season of life, even though the person that she was connected to was having a very different experience. And I didn't want to gloss over that. We can be in situations where we are experiencing something one way. That's probably true, honestly, in a lot of things. And we're with someone else that we're close to. It could be a working relationship, and they might be like, oh my goodness, I thought everything was fine. You've been here for 10 years, and you might be thinking, I have, and I've been miserable for 5, right? And you may not have shown that. So I want to reiterate that there will be moments and seasons in your life where you're going to want to pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you while your mind is trying to rationalize maybe not making a choice and why you should stay and is this crazy. Really listen to everything as you choose to go forward. And then also know there will be moments where you need to do something in your life, and there are people close to you that are having a different experience of that. And it does not make them wrong or you wrong. It is what it is. And then it's up to you to move from there. All right, a few key takeaways that I want to make sure that we also really hone in on. So creativity can become a companion before it becomes a career. And this is a moment where I really do want to speak to people that are in the creative arts fields, those traditional ones. I remember a time, you've heard me talk about my 26-year-old, and she's a filmmaker and into photography and writing. And I remember conversations where she was working so hard to have a career in her field that she recognized that she actually lost the joy that she once had in just doing those things, which is what led her into it. So you can be so focused on trying to achieve something, and maybe that's not creativity for you. It could be a goal. It could be a sport. You're so focused on getting to a certain place that along the way, you almost forget like, oh, I actually like this. Like I started doing this because I genuinely cared about it. Try not to lose that passion, right? Chloé turned to songwriting and guitar in seasons of illness when she was younger, or even seasons of isolation due to COVID. But that expression gave her somewhere to place experiences she was still learning how to understand. So I also want to add to the table, it's also okay if you're in a season that you're like, you know what, I don't even know that I fully understand where I am. You can still find support in the things that you love to do while you're on that road to understanding. You don't necessarily have to wait to have this huge epiphany before you reconnect. So push yourselves to get back to those spaces where you just do it for the joy, not because you need to accomplish something or because you want validation or a job opportunity. And you can take that into anything that you do. Number 2, authentic work begins when you stop abandoning yourself for belonging. Now, dream scenario, we can be authentic and have a sense of belonging. We're wired for belonging. Did you know that? We're actually wired for connection. Our heart and our brain absolutely desires that. It's not going away. Even if you're the person that says, I don't need anybody, I don't like people, that's a whole nother segment that we'll get into. We all desire belonging. And that's not a bad thing, but we do want to pay attention to where the moments where we have spent so much effort trying to belong that we've slowly drifted away from what we know to be true to ourselves. So those are the moments where you're still present and you're walking around and you're engaging in things, but you kind of feel like a shell of yourself, or those moments are not as meaningful as they once were or they could be because you feel like you've lost some parts of your center and you don't maybe feel comfortable being as authentic anymore. So let's also get into for a moment some of the different things that maybe we've experienced over time that can make us feel, I'll say, guarded against being authentic. And there are moments that we sometimes don't even realize it. Like, we've actually just spent so much time trying to fit in that we have almost kind of created a persona of ourselves that is a shell, and it's not really who we are. And one of the ways that you'll know this, before I get into some of those things, is you'll know it because you'll think to yourself, I feel like I'm doing all the right things. I'm trying to be what everyone wants and needs from me. And yet I also feel like I'm surrounded by people that really aren't my people. Like, there are things about them that are okay. They're there. I'm grateful. And there are still parts of myself that I don't get to express, or I don't get to enjoy as much, because this group of people that I am belonging in right now aren't open to those things. And that can wear on you over time. So some of the dynamics that we may experience that cause us to abandon ourselves very slowly and unintentionally can be things like bullying, or having people discredit or minimize the things that we value. Like, why would you want to do that? Can you make enough money to do that? At what point in your life are you going to stop trying to do X, Y, and Z? Well, do you think that's really wise for you? All of those things. You may not think of those things as bullying, but those are things that kind of come at us and make us feel like we need to question what we might want to do in life. There can also be unhealthy relationships, and unhealthy relationships aren't just about partner relationships. We can be in an unhealthy relationship with ourselves. We can have an unhealthy relationship with coworkers or bosses or anyone in our lives. Industry pressure, there's specific industry pressure. If you are a singer or you are a filmmaker, there's pressure in every industry in some form or fashion. And when we allow all of those factors to overshadow who we are, it teaches us to edit who we are, right? I want you to think about that. Where, if you're honest, if you're being really honest with yourself, can you say, yeah, this is a place that I know I edit myself? And if that's true, why? What happened that made you think that that was what you needed to do? I also want you to consider, if you have this place, and I really hope that you do, where are the places that you feel like you do not have to edit yourself? I can only speak for myself. The places in my life that I don't have to edit are the most incredibly meaningful spaces I'm in. And they're not dramatic, right? Like, I'm not talking about, somewhere across the world at the top of dawn. They're just, honestly, people who do not care about what I do, what industry I'm in, how many followers I have, things that don't matter. They just see me. And I just get to show up and be whatever that looks like in the moment. Where are you editing? And where are the spaces, if they exist, that you have the freedom to not edit, or at the least edit less? Coming home to yourself means that you get to choose your truth and self-respect, even when external validation is uncertain. So even if you're surrounded by people that don't like some of the things that you like, that's okay. You know what you like, and you're not afraid to engage, to participate in those dynamics. All right, number 3, faith allows committed action without control of the outcome. There are a lot of things that we do that are an act of faith. Every time we get in our car, it's an act of faith. Every time we get on a plane. So for those of you that might feel like that feels really lofty, sometimes faith is really as simple as surrendering and not being passive. It's opening yourself up to, like, hey, if I stop going back and forth with myself, I actually realize I'm very clear about what I want. Right at the end of our conversation, Chloé and I were talking about being indecisive, and we acknowledged that that can be a dynamic of being a neurodivergent. It can also be a dynamic of just being human. But here's one thing that I can say that I've learned over time that a lot of times when we are being indecisive, it's really us trying to decide, can I give myself permission to do the thing that I actually know that I want to do, regardless of how it may impact other people? So we're really jockeying and trying to figure out, well, if I do it this way, what will this person think? And what will this person think here? And how will this impact here? In some situations, that is important and helpful to think, through a few other perspectives. There are other moments where you are just driving yourself crazy for no reason. So I hereby give you permission to do the things that you would like to do without feeling like you need the approval of everything and everybody. I do realize that if you're a person that struggles with comparison, that is going to be challenging for you, but I encourage you to try it. Find a few little low stakes opportunities where you can go, what do I want? And let me just do it. And the more you do that, you will also realize like, oh, this feels great. It didn't take me a long time to figure out what I needed. I feel lighter. I'm not constantly carrying this really heavy cognitive load. And it teaches you that you can trust yourself. And that is so important. All right, let's shift into a little bit of neuroscience. So creative expression actually gives our emotion structure without boundaries, right? It allows our emotion to be expressed, to have a place to go, to be seen, to be felt without feeling controlled, which is really helpful. A lot of the challenges that we feel are because we have emotion that we are stuffing, that we are internalizing, that becomes trapped in our mind, in our body, in our spirit, and weighs us down in multiple different ways, and it needs space and room to come forward. So music, we talked about that a little bit, engages systems that are involved in emotion, in memory, in movement, in attention, and prediction. If you've been with me for a few episodes or outside of this space, you've heard me talk about the brain being predictive. It is using your past experiences to begin predicting what might happen. Now, sometimes that can be a good thing. And for those of us who have had significant traumas or challenges, that can be a really difficult thing because our predictive memories may come from beliefs that were rooted during seasons that were really difficult. But music actually opens up those neural pathways to begin to consider, what if? What if this time, this situation, this relationship, this experience can actually be different? Rhythm and melody can also help organize an experience that feels fragmented while making it easier to communicate what ordinary conversations may not yet hold. When I first started as a therapist, one of the things that I used to do, and I don't know why I stopped, I need to get back to it, is I would ask every client every week, one, what song are you listening to on repeat? Because it really gave me a lot of insight around where they were and how that was flowing over time. Then there were moments where I would encourage them to make a playlist, and they didn't even have to make it actually, but to write out, if you were choosing 8 songs that other people have written that is an EP that fits where your life is right now, what would that look like? And it was a really powerful way for them to translate where they were without sitting and having to talk about it. So maybe that's something that you would enjoy. Creativity, while it does all of those amazing things, does not erase pain, but it can create a repeatable pathway for expression, for regulation, for meaning, and for connection. So here's a tool that you can use. Create before you perform. 3 questions. What truth or emotion is asking for expression before I know how others will receive it? Second question. What form, music, writing, movement, prayer, visual art, meditation feels most honest to me today? May not be the same every day, so give yourself room. And the third question is, what can I create this week without measuring its worth by views, by applause, or by immediate results? Your gift is not only in what you offer the world. Sometimes it's in the way you survive. It's in the way that you return to yourself. And it's in the way that you leave a little light for someone else. So continue to be a light, not only in your world, but in all the ways that you can, because you are truly important. As always, I'm so glad that you chose to come and spend this time with me. Remember that knowledge is not power without application. So always show up in your life, and we'll talk soon.